Today we are joined by Marcussi. Again, thank you for coming on to this podcast to talk a little bit Bruins hockey. How are you on this evening?
Doing great. Just got off a nice walk, so weather's pretty nice up here in New England. So glad to come on here and talk some bees, boys.
Thank you. And you, Preston?
Yeah, pretty good day in Buffalo as well. Can't complain. I mean, it's always excited to talk about hockey, even if it's about the Bruins. But
So we covered a little bit of this topic yesterday when we talked about RFAs, and the big topic is Jeremy Swayman thankfully avoided arbitration with the Bruins. There have been reports that came out today about him possibly having a deal north of $9 million. If you want to cover a little bit about that, Marcussi, and kind of fill us in about what's going on.
You boys can just stick it to Marcus, but yeah, I didn't really. I'd seen some things where people were debating about whether it would be something along the lines of 10 million for Swayman's caliber, and I'd seen a lot of stuff about how his agent asked for a lot of dough when negotiating these contracts, right? But a lot of people have talked to me about Swayman, what do you think? And I'm just thinking it's better this year, this time around, that there's no arbitration to begin with, because last year there was a lot of, I don't want to say drama with that, but it just felt like it created some emotional turmoil between the Bruins and Swayman, and he definitely took that for motivation. And I don't know if you guys know, but he would talk about it in interviews and say the arbitration bothered him. I don't remember word for word, but it definitely did bother him. So I feel like this is a better step in the right direction, knowing that they probably are in negotiation, but at the same time, it's just coming to a term where it fits both the Bruins and Swayman's needs. So for me, I'm just happy that there's no arbitration. So,
that's a really good thing. Yeah, I think arbitration is usually worst case scenario, and it can end up ruining a player's relationship with the team. And the Bruins are kind of in a pickle now where they pretty much have to get Swayman whatever they want after they traded Allmark away. So I mean, I don't think they would trade Allmark if they were super worried about getting Swayman signed. So I think it was a good sign probably when they traded Allmark. And we were talking about it yesterday, and I wouldn't be shocked if it was around $9 million, $10 million. I think it's the best case scenario for the Bruins just to get this done, get into a 7-8 year deal, just not worry about it. You got a goalie for the next 8 years. It is what it is. You don't have to worry about the money or anything anymore. You just know you have a goalie.
That could be true, but the thing is some have argued from what I've in discussions I've had. Some have argued that Swayman has yet to play a full season as the number one guy, right? Because his years, it's been with Allmark. They've just been buddy teamwork makes the dream work, right? So I think it was the argument is now, can he play north of that 50 game mark and play it at a consistent rate? Which I wouldn't hold it against him. I mean, you look at how he played in the playoffs. He was absolutely carrying Boston. But that's the playoffs. Can you play a rigorous regular season of 50 plus games like these guys like Shesterkin, Sorokin, to name a few? I don't know who else, but the way I look at it, when they traded Linus, originally they didn't want to bring back Korpisalo, and people were pretty mad about Korpisalo. But at the same time, when you look at a goalie like him, he is a more experienced option as a veteran backup that can help backup Swayman, in my opinion. And I remember people just saying oh, he's just the worst statistical goalie. Well, half the battle with goaltenders is, situation, right? We looked at, remember when we signed Allmark and it was that 4x5 deal, and everybody was saying, oh, he's from Buffalo. It's not, some people were saying that it wasn't really feasible. At the same time, look at how much better Allmark played. I mean, guy won a Vezina within our system. So.
Yeah, I remember when Allmark was on the Sabres, I thought he was too good for us, to be honest, because I know a lot of people probably don't watch Sabres games, but the fact that he would have winning records with how bad that team was and had a sub 900 save percentage just showed me how good he was. His problem was he couldn't be healthy, but the team in front of him wasn't doing him any favors. So I had a feeling he was going to be good when he left. I know the Sabres really wanted to keep him, and I don't blame anybody for wanting to leave the Sabres. So,
yeah, and maybe Jonas Corposalo did not work out in Ottawa, but you look at his time in Columbus and his short stint in LA behind a pretty good defense, I would say, in 22-23. 11 games played, a 2.13, 9.21 save percentage when he ended up getting traded towards the deadline. But Corposalo, looking at the baseline stats, has been an up and down goaltender, and behind the blue line, which I think is one of the best in the league, led by McAvoy and Sidorov as your top pairing, as what I'm looking at now projected. Like, Corposalo can definitely have a bounce back season in Boston. And yes, I have been one of those people that have argued that I want to see a full time starter from Swayman. But at the same time, though, if you give him a bridge deal, let's say a 3-year contract worth $8 million, he plays out of this world. He's the top 3 goalie. You're going to be giving him $12 million when that deal's up. And you're going to be even screwed more than if you just gave him a 7 to 8 year contract worth $10 million now. So that's where the Bruins, I think, kind of come into a tough situation because you need a goaltender in this league. I think it's a star and goaltender-driven league outside of a few outliers. And if the Bruins can get Swayman for a 7 to 8 year contract worth $9 to $10 million, I think they're going to be set up for success for a long time, especially with adding Lindholm as your number 1 center, which might have been a tad overpayment, but he fits the mold of the Bruins, and he can bring a facet to the game in which I think he's going to be a true number 1 center on this top 6 in the Bruins lineup.
I see him more of like a second line center. I mean, I think he does help the Bruins a lot. I think this is a very Bruins move. Like, the thing I respect a lot about the Bruins is they know what kind of players they want in their system, and they have identified what a Bruins player is. And then when they want them, they just go out and get them. I mean, I think a good example of this is Morgan Geekie. They brought him in from Seattle. I thought he was a really underrated pickup. He was awesome for Boston last year. He played a lot, the top 6 minutes of the playoffs. So I think, Boston makes this move knowing that he's going to make a significant impact on their team.
You said Lindholm, yeah, if I remember correctly, second line center, you think?
I think on most teams he would project to a second line center, I think. I mean, I think he could be a first-line center in a pinch if he needed him, but I still think he helps Boston a lot.
I think in of Lindholm, it's in terms of where he was on the market, I feel like he was maybe, aside from Stamkos, but we all know Stammer loves playing wing and absolutely, ripping those one-timers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say Lindholm in this case was the top center option available,
Mm-hmm.
and opinion, I looked at him when we signed him. I was like, sure, yeah, people will consider it an overpayment, but especially in free agency, you got to give him the dough. You know what I mean? You got to pay for guys.
I'm sure he had a lot of teams interested in him. So,
yeah, sure. And the thing is I look at him, I'm like, this guy, I like his play style. You know what I mean? I watched a bit of the film. I'm not no scout or anything. But I feel like I'm going to enjoy watching this guy in black and gold. Yeah, he's had a bit of a, up and down points trajectory, but I feel like on a line, hypothetically speaking, with David Pastrnak and probably Pavel Zacha on that left side, I feel like those boys could do some damage together. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like he would really that $7 million, or what was it, 775?
7.5.
Yeah, 7.75. Yeah.
I'm excited to see how he will mold into that. I feel like he could really revive himself in Boston, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
going
he's
into
a good
the later
fit.
stage.
Yeah, I think he's a good fit for the team. I mean, it makes a lot of sense why they both decided to go to Boston. Another big free agent addition they made was Nikita Zadorov. I'm going to be honest. I think this is a big overpayment. I think he's more of a top middle pair, maybe bottom pair, physical defenseman. I mean, $5 million isn't the worst, but yeah, I don't know if I like that term.
The thing is with, and when we look at it from a money standpoint, the NHL has the hard salary cap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in a hard salary cap landscape, you have to be very wise with what you're paying, because what you're paying truly lives up to the value of what you're getting. Because when you look at a league like the NFL or the NBA, it feels like almost every single player that gets a contract sets the bar for like the maximum deal possible, right?
Yeah.
Jason Tatum this season receiving like 200 whatever million. Like I saw Emmanuel Quickly get like a 200 million whatever deal. All these guys get these big contracts, and it doesn't really matter because leagues like that, they're allowed to go over the salary cap because of, certain circumstances. I know in the NBA they have the luxury tax. The NHL doesn't exactly have the luxury of the luxury tax. They got the LTIR, right? But in general, what the Bruins are looking at in a sense of long term, you may look at Zadorov's payment and you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely an overpay. But down the road, say he's a feasible player who plays well within the system of the Bruins. That $5 million contract looks like nothing compared. It's like a lower bar in my opinion, because as the years go on, we look at how successful the NHL is becoming as a league, right? I mean, they just had the draft in the Sphere.
Yeah, that was a cool draft. Yeah.
They're like, you know what I mean? This the Frozen Frenzy stuff with ESPN, all this stuff they're doing. Yeah, we can duke on Gary Bettman all we want, but the league is going and it's making money. So as the salary cap goes up, I feel like deals like Lindholm and Zadorov's are gonna be like second fiddle, paying attention to what like other guys are gonna get. Like, Draisaitl's gonna get paid a lot. McDavid's gonna get paid a lot. I'm looking at it from the Oilers, but down the road, if Zadorov plays good, like if he's not like completely terrible, we won't look back on this and be like, oh, that was a terrible signing, which I pray to God that it just works out like fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Zadorov, like, you are taking a bit of. He's a really physical player. Gets a good amount of penalties. I mean, I think the bigger risk is I think the term more than the money. Like, I agree with you. I think in a few years, $5 million isn't going to really be much anymore. But the salary cap probably going to go over $100 million in a few years. I think $5 million is going to look like $3 now. Like, it won't be as much money. But I think the bigger risk is in the term. But that's where I'm more concerned with Zadorov. He's a very super physical guy, prone to injuries. So, if he works out for Boston, it's awesome for them. But I think there's a bit more risk there with Zadorov than Lindholm. Because Lindholm, I think he's like a proven commodity. You know exactly what you're getting. Zadorov's a bit of a wild card. He's going to be physical, but I think that's about it.
Has Zadorov had previous injuries before? I haven't really looked into that.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't think he's had any major injuries, but I'm just saying, like, with his physical, like how physical he is, and he getting older, I think like that kind of makes you more prone to injuries in the long term because he's a super physical guy.
Well, I feel like if he's the one doing the hitting, I don't think he has anything to worry about. You know what I mean? Because if somebody's along the boards and he absolutely knocks him out, then it's going to be like, he's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you never know.
I like the play style. You know what I mean? The Bruins kind of, especially come playoff time in recent years, it feels like, at least when I watch, it feels like they lacked that sort of physical presence in front of the net, that physical presence along the boards to really, get pucks out of the corners and, into our possession. Because especially against Florida these past 2 years, right? The big argument, people would, get on McAvoy about how he couldn't exactly, step up in ways. But at the same time, a lot of teams would focus their forecheck on him because he's the number one guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially looking at some of the smaller defensemen, so to speak. I don't want to target anybody, but Bruins fans are not exactly fans of Matt Grzelcyk because of his smaller, frame. Getting a guy like Nikita Zadorov mitigates that sort of forecheck in a way that Florida brings, Carolina brings, those big teams that really try to, bring it to you. So, in my opinion, they, I like what they're giving for Zadorov, and I feel like he will really, elevate the back end for the Bruins.
Okay.
So, going into this past season, I honestly underrated the Bruins, and I had them as a wildcard team at best. This season, I'm the exact opposite.
That was kind of a wild take when you did that.
This season, I'm the exact opposite, and I think this Bruins team has the potential to make a run in the Eastern Conference. Now, you're competing with teams like the Devils, like the Panthers. You can't count out the Lightning with Kucherov and Gensel. And just the list goes on and on. The Atlantic Division in general is going to be super strong. You have 6 teams in that division, possibly 7 teams that could make it into the playoffs, right? But the Bruins always seem to find a way. It doesn't matter. Pastrnak will put up 110 plus points. Swayman, if he shows us he can be another Vezina caliber goaltender, top 5 in the league by the end of this season. Like, this team finds a way to get into the playoffs somehow. Now, do I have a little bit of concern with some of their oldness? Sure, but also that was what I was concerned with last season, and they ended up making it to the second round, and they were top 3 in the Atlantic Division.
Well, they kind of choked the Atlantic Division too. They should have probably won that division.
Yeah, they had a 4-5 point lead.
I think Florida won it like the last week of the season because Boston went on a losing streak at like the wrong time of the year.
There was a big speculation that the team that nobody wanted to play Tampa Bay in round 1, and I was like, that's a low.
I'd rather play Tampa Bay than Toronto.
And that's kind of what I said because of the whole power play versus 5-on-5 scoring thing. But everybody just wanted to play Toronto, which I wasn't going to complain. That was a good series. But
it was awesome. It was probably the best series of the playoffs outside the Stanley Cup final because the Stanley Cup final was incredible this year. But yeah.
Oh. Continue though.
Honestly, if I was a Bruins fan during the Leafs series, I would have had a heart attack. The storylines
they almost blew it.
The storylines in that series, though, once the Leafs came back and it was 3-3, were actually kind of good, though.
I just knew because my friends were like, "Oh, we're up 3." My friends are all basketball kids. They don't understand, like they don't know like the 2013 stuff or the 2018 and 19. They don't know like they don't know the trend. And I told them, they're like, "Oh, Marcus, you're not confident for Game 5?" I'm like sitting at my TV. I'm like, and they're like, "You're not. Why aren't you confident?" I'm like, "It always goes 7." And they're like, "What are you talking about? You don't support your team?" I'm like, "It always goes 7."
Yeah,
it always, even regardless of result between those two teams, it's just a guarantee that it always goes 7. You know, and I love it when we play Toronto. I preferred to play Toronto, not for the drama, but just like the intensity, because I said, it was probably the most intense and entertaining round. That was like some fun playoff hockey, and what a way to cap it off with that.
I mean, how many years have they last 6-7 years they've played each other in the first round? It's been like at least 3 or 4, right?
4 times, I would say, in the last 11 years.
I mean, that's a lot for our first round matchup. That's a lot. I mean, that's kind of how it is with like the divisional stuff now. Because they might play each other in the first round again next year.
You never know. It all depends on how 1, 2, 3 fizzles out, and then that wild card might be a Metro team. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bruins are definitely like a top 3 Atlantic team. I think they got better this offseason. I'd be shocked if they missed the playoffs last year. They'd have to everything would have to go wrong for them to miss the playoffs next year. But I mean, I could see them winning the Atlantic Division. I think their biggest rival's probably Florida.
I think Florida's their only threat.
The big thing with the Bruins, and I've read some of this, but I've also gathered some thought myself. The big thing that has helped them succeed, especially throughout the regular season, is the tandem.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge part as to why they were able to just get away with so many games. Because I don't know if you guys got the standings up there right now, but I think we have the most overtime losses last year.
Yeah, I can pull that up real quick.
Whether we stole a game or not, I don't know if we have the most. Don't hold me.
I don't know. The Canadians had about 25 million.
But it felt like watching every game, it was like we were just holding on. Our goaltending was absolutely stellar, and we would just make it to overtime and pray that we would figure it out from there.
The only team last year sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The only team last year that had more overtime losses than the Bruins was the Islanders. So the Islanders had 16, the Bruins had 15.
No, didn't the Canadians have 16?
Yeah, the Canadians also had 16, my bad,
okay.
yeah. Sorry, they were a little down
the
list.
You're good.
but in general, it's like, yeah, 2022, 23, we had that amazing season. I don't even know how, but a trend in the past 2 seasons has been Swayman and Allmark absolutely stealing you. Even if they were stealing you games and you lost in overtime, you still got a point. And that 1 point in every single one of those 15 overtime losses is still 15 points that gets you in a very high spot in the Atlantic Division. The big question for me is, they're a lot younger. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the average age. We're like 27, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the big question is like, can the Bruins do it without that guaranteed star show of Swayman and Allmark? That is the biggest question for me coming in. And who's going to be that top six winger? Like, is Fabian Lysell going to come in? That he's a huge question from a Bruins fan perspective coming into the season. The Bruins are looking to bring him up, Merkulov up, or Riley Duran, who's a Providence College, guy. But looking at that wing position, I forget if it's left or right. You lose DeBrusque, and it's like, all right, we need somebody to fill this. So that's a big question too. But I'm hoping, it's filled and it's answered. But if it's not, trade deadline would be an interesting topic for Bruins fans again. In my opinion, that's me.
Yeah, I mean, for the goaltending, I know we've talked about this a bunch, but I don't think Korpisalo is going to be that bad as a backup. I think any goalie would have been bad on the Senators last year. That team was they couldn't play defense at all. Like, it was actually a ridiculous how bad they were playing defense.
I'm waiting for them to be good.
I'm not buying into the hype
I'm
anymore.
just waiting for them.
I'm not doing it. I'm not if the Senators go on and get a 90 points, 95 points to make the playoffs this season. Sure, I bought into the hype last season. I'm not doing it. The Senators can eat shit.
I'm just waiting for them. Like, it just feels like they got such a good plethora of decent young talent, like top heavy young talent. I'm just waiting for them to be like, okay, now we're actually legitimate. But I can't explain it. I just want to see them take a step.
I'm just waiting for Brady Tkachuk to say trade me. Pull a Jack Eichel.
I don't know if you would do that. I don't know if you do that as a captain, but it would be some interesting drama and a lot of jersey swaps.
I mean, that's what Eichel did with Buffalo. He asked for a trade before he even got hurt.
The off-season before?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, before he hurt his neck, he asked for a trade, and they said no.
I remember the jersey swaps on that. A lot of Bruins ones, too.
It wouldn't shock me if Eichel goes to UFA if he signs with the Bruins. That would just make too much sense. He's a Boston kid. It's probably his dream to play for the Bruins. It would make sense.
I don't know. It's just the thing with hockey though is most of these players they settle in, they find a home, and it's like they start a family, and it's like you got the kids and everything. That hockey's a very family oriented. Let's settle in and find a home. Like DeBrusque. When I saw he signed for 7 years, I'm like, yep, he's not leaving there again. He's gonna stay there, settle in home. When guys come into an area, they're just they hope they can stay. A big thing with Allmark, not to keep looping around. Allmark was saying he wanted to be able to find a spot where his family could be. Boston, he thought was going to be that, but sadly,
yeah.
That's a big thing though.
One more guy who I am kind of high on real quick before we end things off is Mason Lohrei. I do really like Mason Lohrei on the back end. I don't know how you Bruins fans feel about him personally, but I think he could be an integral part of this blue line and develop into a nice little guy. I mean, he's 23 years old, very, very young. How many? So he played 41 games on the roster last season.
Yeah, he played in the playoffs as well. Yeah.
So he can step up into, what would he be, the bottom pair defenseman at the moment?
Yeah.
He would.
So,
be a bottom.
I mean, I just can't get over the blue line and how you throw, I know we talked about it 6 million times, the goaltending, Joonas Korpisalo behind the blue line, I think, is due for bounce back season, and honestly, once Jeremy Swayman gets this contract, I think you have a future Vezina winning trophy goaltender as long as Shesterkin and Hellebuck don't steal about 25 from him. But, I mean, outside of that, though, the competition for Swayman, I think, is very narrow considering how talented he is. But you guys got...
Vesta's not guaranteed or anything. I mean, he still has to play well. I mean, I think he is a great goalie, so I think he will do well with the Bruins. But, I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he could do, like, as a full season as the unquestioned starter, like, for sure, because that can change a lot.
True that. Yeah, the betting odds may say he's the favorite, but the guy still needs a contract to be able to say, I play for the Boston Bruins. That's what I keep telling people.
They'll get it done. They'll get it done.
Yeah, just make sure you put it in ink, and then you can start, like, calling him a or whatever. But the league is full of talented goalies, and the guy has yet to play 50 games, which I want to see. Go get those 50 games, man. Go get that bread. Go play lights out. Boston, we adore Jeremy Swayman. And going back to your point about Mason Lohrei, what Bruins fans think of him, like we think of any player who wears the spoked B in the black and gold. We love him. Lohrei is a guy who we look at as a high upside guy, someone that could really integrate himself as a future, offensive defenseman on this team. I am excited to see, what he's got in the tank for next season. But I am interested to see how Jim Montgomery is going to sort of line up that bottom six, especially when Parker Wotherspoon and Andrew Peeke played so well together on that bottom pair. And I know it sounds like, it's just like those two guys, be serious. But if I look at the analytics, come at me if you want, but look at the analytics, and those two are pretty good together, according to the analytics. I won't go into the mumbo jumbo, but they do play well together. So that is also a big question. But yeah, I do like what I see. I like what I saw out of Lohrei. Bruins fans love him, and we hope we can see a little more of him this year.
Yeah, I would be excited if I were you guys as well for at least minimum this upcoming season, barring any disasters, knock on wood. Again, thank you for joining us here today. We appreciate you taking time out of your day. And if you don't mind, just let everybody know where to find you.
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, at Marcussi. That's where I'm mainly at. So if you guys like a ton of Bruins informational stuff, you can follow my Instagram. I'm active way more on there than I would be on my TikTok. So give that a follow if you want to, of course. And thank you guys for having me on. I always love talking.
Of course, anytime. Thank you.
This is really fun to just be able to duke it out, hash it out with a couple of Buffalo guys. You know what I mean? You guys are on the come up, so I'm excited to see what.
They've been saying that for years, man. They've been saying that for years. I'm so sick of it.
Hey, look! When that boy Tage Thompson gets into a flow, like a real rhythm, you know what I mean? Nobody can stop that guy. I love watching that guy. He's one of my favorite players in the league. But buddy, never watched hockey before. I showed him a documentary on Tage Thompson that I think ESPN did with Emily Kaplan. Kid fell in love with him.